Good afternoon, everyone. Really glad that you can join us today for Liberate IT's NetSuite customer event. We've got another online event for you today, and hopefully this will be our last. It's our hope that this is a last one that we do for you, and we can resume our in-person events again later in the year. Whether you've been with us for 10 years or thinking about adopting NetSuite for your business for the first time, you are very welcome. And I think we have something for everyone today. We believe that our customers should be equipped to utilize NetSuite in their business on a day-to-day basis. There's a range of free and paid training available to you. And if you're not sure where to find any of this, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Having said that, no business stands still, and NetSuite is the right solution to grow with your business. We are firm believers in small, regular investments in improving NetSuite to ensure you get the most out of it. Of course, you might be thinking, Andrew, I don't know what I don't know. Can you help? And yes, we have a free optimization visit with Brett Marquette, our new optimization manager, once a year, who can take you through how you may better use NetSuite. We are busy scheduling those in, but if you would like to jump the queue, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me, and I would be happy to arrange for Brett to come out and see you. But enough of all that. I'm really keen to get through today's webinar and take you all through NetSuite 21.1 plus some other features. So I'll just quickly run through the agenda for you. Kicking off, we're going to have Paul Beatie. He's going to talk a little bit about our 10-year anniversary and what that means for us and for you. We're going to be joined by the team at NetSuite. We're going to understand some areas of NetSuite such as WMS and also bank feeds, which I know many of you are very interested in. So we've got Matt Taylor, our Regional Product Director from NetSuite, to talk to us about that as well. We are going to cover off the new features in 21.1. You'll get to meet some of the consulting team who are our resident experts in all things NetSuite. So looking forward to that. Shortly after that, the same team are going to go through some demonstrations and best practice around some areas that are already part of NetSuite, but you may not already be taking advantage of. So really looking forward to those. That should be great. And then the end of our session, that should take us to about 2:30. At the end of the session, Paul and I will be going through some things around new release upgrades and support case logging with our support team, which is what I'll be going through. And that's mainly aimed at new users to the NetSuite platform, but everyone is more than welcome to join us for that. So without any further ado, I am going to hand over to Paul Beatie, our Managing Director, and he will take you through our 10-year anniversary. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Andrew, and welcome everyone to, yes, 10 years of Liberate IT. First of all, once again, we are doing this virtually. What we had really hoped was that we would all be on site again. I'm really missing meeting all the customers, the networking opportunities, the chance for you to all to talk amongst each other, meet each other, talk about your solutions, your processes, your NetSuite system, and also be able to do a birthday cake, have a few drinks, celebrate what I think is a huge milestone. So, excuse me, I just share my screen here. So yes, 10 years ago this month, Liberate IT started. And back then it was a very different world. Their cloud computing was just starting. Everyone had a server. It was a hard ask to go and convince people to literally rent accounting software. That just wasn't a done thing. And that was the story that we had to start with Liberate IT. The person that had to go out and convince people that it was okay to rent accounting software, that was our first employee, Steve Pyer, 10 years ago this month. I just want to say very quickly, Steve has been such an asset to Liberate IT. I cannot imagine Liberate growing to where it is today without Steve leading the charge. I think you've all talked with Steve. I think Steve has been integral in your adoption of NetSuite. And as far as Liberate IT is concerned, he's just been such a huge asset, and I'm really excited that as we get bigger and bigger, Steve is still with us. 10 days after, which Steve never stops reminding me, but 10 days after, I joined Liberate IT. So 2 of us have our 10-year anniversary this month. Steve and I sat down in the early days and we had to think about what we wanted Liberate IT to mean. As I said, it was a very different world. On-premise software ruled in New Zealand, certainly ERP systems. So we're talking about adopting new technology. But we also wanted to know what sort of company we wanted to grow, what we wanted to create. So we set about some base philosophies. And the neat thing is that a lot of those base philosophies are still with us today. And if I've ever been involved in a pre-sales or solutioning meeting with you, you've probably heard me talk about these things. But number one was we wanted Liberate to be seen as an honest, reputable company. And that comes from people like Steve and I. You know, we set the scene. And I'm really proud that everyone that we've employed has come in with that philosophy, because everyone wants to do a good job and to do the right thing. We wanted to be services orientated. We didn't want to be one of these organizations that just sold and sold and sold and sold. And while yes, that's important to grow, we actually wanted to be known as having one of the top-notch services team in the NetSuite community. We wanted to be the nice guys out there, and we wanted to be seen as someone that you could talk to that would give honest answers. We wanted to give back. We didn't just want to take people's money. We wanted to give back. And so things like this user group, I think we'd been going for a year when we started our first user group. There was only 6 people around the table at that stage. Now, I think we're just bordering on 100 people on the Zoom call. We do free webinars at least twice a month. And we have the info hub going out with tips and tricks and things like that. We have these free optimization visits, which I started doing, then Leanne took over. Now we have a full-time person in Brett to go out there, and Brett has been using NetSuite as a customer for years, coming up, I think 6-7 years, and then has been working on our larger site, Datacom, for the last 2 years, and has now come on as our optimization manager. You all get to meet him for free to talk about your NetSuite system and where you can take it, where you can optimize it. But there's other things, not just away from NetSuite. It was also about how we wanted to run the company. 10 years ago, we actually decided that we're going to prove to people that you could run a business in the cloud. You actually didn't need a physical office. So we've never had a physical office. We've always run the company virtually. And now we've got employees in many cities and many places around Australia and New Zealand, and they all still work from their home offices. Things like COVID have hit. For Liberate, it was business as usual. There was also a work-life balance that we wanted to bring to our employees. And it's something that I get a lot of feedback on, is that how they can enjoy both being excellent consultants, salespeople, support people, but also being able to be with their families when they need to be with their families. And I think that's just really important when running a company and working for a company, that you can have that work-life balance. The other thing we talked about was getting really, really good people. Not the cheapest people, but the best people. So that when we put someone on site to do some implementation, I could trust them. I knew they knew NetSuite really, really well. So while you're looking at 2 people 10 years ago, now Steve and I are very small little circles in the top left-hand corner. And what's more, this isn't the entire team. Since this slide was put together, we've taken on 2, I think perhaps Andrew, 3 new people that haven't had their photos taken yet. Last count, and I did the payroll, there are over 35 people working for Liberate. The vast majority of those are NetSuite consultants, and not only NetSuite consultants, but experienced NetSuite consultants, many of them experienced in industry. They're based in Auckland, they're based in Wellington, in Melbourne, in Sydney, and Brisbane. 3 years ago, we entered the Australian market, and that has just continued to grow. And now we have a true ANZ company. When I look at the slide and when I know all the people there, I listen to them talking to customers, I truly believe that Liberate has the best team of consultants of any NetSuite partner in the ANZ region. And I do know the vast majority of the NetSuite partners. I really can trust these people that you see on your screen to go and do a very, very good job and to be true consultants out there, which may mean being a little assertive, but what we're trying to do is take you on a journey to get you the best possible result. What else has happened over the last 10 years? Well, we started as what's called a premium partner. That means we got no stars. Within 2 years, we became a 2-star partner. The next year, we were a 3-star partner. We hovered around 4-star partner for a couple of years. And then 4 years ago, I think it was, Tony may tell me wrong there, we became what is the top level partner in NetSuite's ecosystem, a 5-star partner. And we've continued to be a 5-star partner. We just got nominated again this year to be a 5-star partner. So we also, in our journey from that very first customer, which was signed just 6 weeks after the company started, and I mean, that's some risk to decide to take on a ERP system you rent with a company that had no customers, that was new into the NetSuite system. But one customer did do that. That customer was Accurate Locksmiths, who signed with us on 27th of April, 2011. Matt Langenkamp is still with us, and Accurate is a mobile locksmith and has continued to grow. In fact, you can read about Matt's journey with NetSuite because we have a case study of him on our website. But one comment that Matt did make in the case study was, NetSuite can do all the work of a person, meaning we've been able to save $55,000 plus up to $20,000 on consultants annually. Once your business gets to a certain size, it's worth it. It's been a great journey with Matt, and I've had lots of great philosophical debates about him, not on NetSuite, but on many other topics. And I hope he's with us in 10 years' time for our 20th, because that is one thing about NetSuite. It does scale. And from that very first customer, we now have over 110 customers using NetSuite across Australia and New Zealand. The journey continues, and I want to welcome the new customers to Liberate IT that have joined over the last few months. Starbucks coffee, so I want you to all to be drinking Starbucks coffee now, rather than any of those other brands, is currently being implemented with NetSuite. Transnet, Worldfront, which is better known as Fish Pond, Juraco Aluminium Extrusions, Argyle Schoolwear, which any of you with children probably use their website to buy their school uniforms, Organic Trader up in Brisbane, Finder, Muddy River, and Tivoli. Welcome to those customers, and hopefully in 6 months' time, they'll be well into the implementations or possibly finished their implementations, and hopefully you'll be able to meet each other at the next user group, which I really hope will be on site. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for coming along to this user group, this customer event. I hope you learn lots over the next few hours. I hope our consultants manage to condense the next release so that you don't have to read all the detail. As always, I am available. Please just pick up the phone and call me, whether it be good, whether it be bad, whether it be indifferent. I'm always really happy to talk to any of our customers, whether it be on the phone or out for a coffee or even a beer. Now with that, I'd like to introduce Dale Ellis. A lot of you will know Dale. He is Liberate's NetSuite account manager for NetSuite, obviously. And Dale, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me, Paul. It's great to be part of your 10-year anniversary. celebrations, and congratulations on reaching such a milestone. That really is an excellent achievement. And we've got one of our senior directors here, our senior director for channel in ANZ. His name's Tony Field. And I'll hand over to Tony in a sec to talk a little bit more about that. What I might do is just share my screen. Andrew, can you see that? Is that coming up on your screen?
Sure is.
Excellent. Okay, great. So look, we are looking at a few product-related roadmap type slides today. So we do have to show our safe harbor statement. This basically just says that anything that you see here may or may not happen, and we ask you not to base sort of any business decisions on those roadmap sort of forward-looking statements that we make. The agenda that we're talking to today is just an introduction from Tony Field. I'm going to run through a bit of NetSuite WMS kind of high-level overview stuff, as well as some of the new features that are being delivered in 21.1. And then I'll hand over to our regional product director, Matt Taylor, who's joining us from Hong Kong. So without further ado, Tony, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Dale. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. I know you're here to learn about all the great new things that NetSuite and Liberate IT has to offer, but I just wanted to hijack the meeting for 2 minutes. And the reason for that, of course, is to congratulate Liberate IT on their 10-year anniversary, which is truly a huge milestone. And to mark the occasion, you can't see this, but I even put on a collared shirt today. I wasn't sure where the video was on, but for those that don't know, our offices have been shut for 12 months. So I did manage to find a collared shirt. But anyway, anyone who's started a business or is involved in running a business day to day knows what a huge achievement that is. And it's a testament to Paul and the leadership team and the dedication from everyone at Liberate to achieve this milestone. But it also wouldn't have happened without you, their customers. And I think this also demonstrates their dedication and focus to customer success as well. And right from the start, Liberate chose to focus on NetSuite only and have remained focused on NetSuite for all of those 10 years. So they are truly a valued partner of ours. Not only that, they continue to invest in people, in marketing, in sales consultants, in delivery, and even during the challenges of the past 12 months with COVID, they've continued to invest. And as a result, you heard from Paul, they consistently achieve the metrics that we set to be recognized as a 5-star partner. And we're very proud that they continue to be a 5-star partner in NetSuite. More importantly, though, I think they continue to invest in their customers by running events such as this to keep you informed of what's happening across NetSuite. And this is just one of their differentiators, and it's why they are so highly regarded as a NetSuite partner. So look, again, congratulations, Paul, Steve, and Liberate IT for an absolutely fantastic 10 years. It's fascinating to hear your journey, Paul, over those 10 years to achieve 5-star. We wish you continued success for many, many, many years to come. I look forward to when we can actually meet up in person and celebrate. But until then, we'll be sending you a gift to mark this milestone. And as I say, it's in the mail. So, hopefully we can meet up soon. Congratulations once again, and have a great session today. Thanks, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you, Tony, very much for those words. Really appreciate them. I look forward to the gift. Do I have to share it with the rest of the team?
That's as general manager, that's your decision, mate. All the best.
Thank you, Tony.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Tony. All right, guys, look, we've got a few slides that talk about NetSuite WMS. Obviously, I've met a lot of you in person and at previous Liberate IT user events. And you'll know that I'm an account manager and I know a little bit about the software, but you guys have some excellent resources and some excellent supply chain expertise in the consultants at Liberate IT. So this really is a brief overview that looks at what is WMS, and basically it's a solution that helps fulfill orders more quickly and accurately. It really allows warehouse managers to track the transfer and the storage of inventory and use mobile devices and barcoding to help automate shipping, receiving, and picking and packing processes. It does reduce costs by minimizing handling time, But as we see in a lot of the WD and manufacturing verticals nowadays, you know, e-commerce growth can be a driving metric, and providing a really good customer experience is often very important, and optimizing your supply chain and your warehouse management operations can really feed into improving that overall customer experience. So we see this as a way not just to drive revenue growth and gross margin, but also kind of really improve your end user experience. So let's look at some of the sort of common challenges that customers typically encounter when they're running their warehouse operations. You know, obviously manually receiving and putting away stock and making sure they're doing that in an efficient way can be challenging at times, especially as warehouses evolve, and you know, sometimes there isn't space on shelves, and they kind of become these you know, more convoluted processes than we'd like. So those put away strategies keep that sort of put away process optimized. If you look at some of the outbound activities, you know, we've got single order picking processes and random picking paths that can present challenges. You know, now we're able to pick multiple orders and use sequence picking, which really helps. And all of this stuff, you know, this is really useful data to have in one platform as we grow sort of front-end capabilities like AI. In terms of inventory activities, you know, manual cycle count management and pick bin shortages can really impact the ability to fulfill orders. So, you know, obviously we've got automatic reminders and tasks and bin replenishment, which is really useful. Here's a quick summary of WMS features and functions, and it's split into 4 main sections. We've got inbound operations, inventory operations, outbound operations, and then some other capabilities on top of that. Now, the customers that are live with NetSuite WMS, they really love some of these features. The mobile system recommended put away makes it really easy for them to pack inventory or to receive inventory. You know, when actually looking at inventory operations, mobile bin-to-bin replenishment and mobile bin transfer are some of the items that Liberate IT customers have mentioned previously, and those are now available in NetSuite WMS. We've also got the ability to update inventory status using the mobile app, which is really useful. In this release, 21.1, there is a pack station staging area, and the ability to you know, pick multiple orders and release them in waves. So there are some great features being delivered in this release. And then otherwise, we've got, you know, support for GS1 barcodes, which are quite important in our region. I understand a lot of the major sort of supermarket chains rely on that format of barcode, and that is supported, which is useful. And you know, NetSuite has this engagement philosophy called Suite Success, and what that means is it's not just a product that comes with pre-configured roles and dashboards and KPIs. You know, there's also a number of custom searches that you get with the product already built into it. But it's also a delivery methodology. What we look to do is we look to kind of land an MVP style product that's you know, still quite feature rich, but make sure that you can get up and running, and we try and limit the customizations and make sure that you're using the base level functionality first. So this product, you know, it was refactored a couple of years ago, and it's just grown from strength to strength, and it's just great to see so many features being delivered each release. In the 21.1 release, you know, we've got a number of releases, a number of features and enhancements coming in. And, you know, some of those we've touched on already. So, you know, when we look at inbound, you've got the ability to move carts for received items. You can change the status for bin put away, and the ability to change inventory status is a big one. When we look at outbound processing, we've got new wave release capabilities, new WMS system rules to enable the bulk picking of large pick tasks and the bulk staging of large pick tasks, and obviously pick reversal on mobile devices as well. But in this release, we've also got a NetSuite Packstation app. Now, this is actually pretty useful because, you know, it extends order fulfillment processing in your warehouse or any location that uses a kiosk device. But it supports multi-level packing that lets you pack items into cartons and then pack cartons onto pallets. So it helps you identify items that have the same shipping route and pack them at the same time. You gain extra visibility into those items and orders packed across multiple cartons, and you're able to print customizable carton labels, pallet labels, bills of lading, and packing lists. So it really is a great app that's just been released, and we've got all these excellent features that become available with every NetSuite release. There were some WMS videos that I was keen to get through, but each of these videos is about 5 minutes, and you're welcome to view them online. They're on YouTube, so you can definitely log in there and have a look at them, and we'll be able to distribute these links after the meetup, I believe. Sorry, Andrew, I've just got one more. I know that we're probably running over time a little bit, but that was a really comprehensive tour. Look, I did just want to mention that we have got an LCS company-wide pass. I mean, Matt mentioned that that we are focusing on the human element, and this is something exciting that's coming up. And we would like to just mention that we are trying to make training more available, and we're looking at extending the LCS pass to making it a company-wide pass, and we'll have some more information on that in future. But thanks very much for sharing, Andrew. That's it from us at NetSuite, and thanks for including us in the event. Congrats again.
Thanks very much, Dale. That's great. That was certainly comprehensive. And good to know how many developers that you have there at NetSuite, all banging away there, and just making sure that we get new features in the software. Right, it's a subscription that our customers are paying for, and so great that we can deliver extra value to them every 6 months. So talking of which, it's a nice segue into introducing our consulting team. We're going to go through the 21.1 highlights with you all, and we're going to kick off with Mira, and she's going to take us through the administration and accounting enhancements in the latest release. So Mira, over to you.
All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the general administration in the space of advanced numbering. So that's a brand new thing that's been introduced in this new release. So generally with document numbering and also entity numbering, you can actually do them, but it's not hugely flexible. So you can add your subsidiary prefixes or location prefixes, and you can add some other suffixes as you like. But in this new release, they are going to be configurable. So you'll be able to set up flexible document and transaction numbering that will reflect the requirements of the countries that you do business in. This will make it possible to use multiple complex numbering sequences that use different prefixes and suffixes based on the rules that you set up. So you can set up rules such as transaction types, fiscal years, and anything else that really is relevant. So in the current release, so what you can actually currently do, so you can set it up based on a record type. So what that does, it generates IDs for all created records of that specific type. So in the new release, though, you'll be able to set up a collection of rules for one transaction type, and they can be grouped into a rule set. So these rules or rule sets can be set in a specific order, and that will decide the numbering of the created records. It's even possible to create a default rule to use when no other rules apply. So just to give you an example, so you create two rule sets, each one, let's say, set to a specific fiscal year. So the system will then update your document or transaction numbering sequence when a new fiscal year begins, instead of continuing on the original sequence. So when you're exporting or reporting on data, the difference in the sequence is going to give you a better overview of the dates of the transactions. So the rules have some of the following attributes. So you've got your numbering format. So that includes prefixes, suffixes, and minimum digits. So that's already available. You can automate sequences by segment. So you can use a rule as a combination of fiscal year, location, or subsidiary, and a unique number sequence, any one of those or all of those together. So it will generate then all possible combinations based on what you've selected. So for example, if you select a fiscal year, NetSuite will generate a unique numbering sequence for every fiscal year. But if you select fiscal year and subsidiary, it will then generate a unique sequence for every subsidiary plus every fiscal year. So, and then another criteria is application criteria, including the date range, country, and also other criteria. For example, a numbering rule can be applied to transactions within a date range, whether it's posting or not, or if it's within a certain posting period. So you can set some date ranges for that as well. So in the last release, they had introduced the ability to set your own transaction numbering. So you may notice, so in the document numbers, you'll have your general standard transactions that you need to send out to your customers, but transaction numbering applies to transactions that you don't necessarily send out to customers. For example, vendor bills, bill credits. So those are generally received in. So you can, so in the past, it was automated, the numbering of that. In the last release, you could change it if you wanted to, but you had to send a request to support to enable that. But now in the new release, you can actually enable that yourself under general preferences. And there will also be a separate permission called auto-generated numbers. So you'll be able to give that access to someone other than the administrator if you like. Also, the advanced numbering is supported for importing document numbers from external systems. So what that means is when you import transactions from other applications using SuiteScript, CSV imports, REST, or JSON, the feature will determine the number in the following way. So if the external document numbers are present, advanced numbering will use those document numbers. If it's missing, it will generate its document numbers based on your rules. And advanced numbering will always generate new transaction numbers. You can't import transaction numbers though. So that what I said before, where it will follow what you imported. So that's for document numbers and entity numbers. So for transaction numbers, it will always generate new ones. So to enable the feature, you'll find it under Setup Company, Setup Tasks, and Enable Features. And then go and check the advanced numbering box. And then you can set up the roles under Setup Company, Email, Setup Auto Generated Numbers. So if you want more information on how to set it up, you can watch a demonstration on it on Suite Answers 97639. Another feature that's been enhanced as well is the next generation custom transactions, where just out of the box, you can now apply the transactions to each other. So with standard transactions, you know how you create a credit note, you can then go and apply it to an invoice. So in the new release, you'll find that if you were to create a custom sales transaction, and this is a custom transaction, I don't mean like sales orders, invoices that are already available there, you'll find a new subtab called apply, so that that can then be applied to other transactions. You can also include the custom transaction in workflows, starting with the sales order as well. So the demo for this will be in Suite Answers 97684. Okay, moving on to the next one. Now this might be a little bit exciting. We've got, oh, sorry, I've moved on too quickly. No. So we've got customer scheduled maintenance page that's been enhanced. So you'll be able to, sorry, for administrators, you'll be able to include notes about actions that you've taken for a reschedule maintenance. So in the last release, you would have noticed that you were able to schedule your own maintenance if the time didn't suit your business. So you can also view a log of any of the rescheduled actions. And then by default, also the available without login setting for files that you upload using SOAP will now be set to false for images and website hosting files. What else do we have? We have new help links available in application performance management tools. So if you're not already using this, so this is quite a good suite app, application performance management, that analyzes and tracks your system performance. So if you are finding that, you know, perhaps your system has slowed down and you'd like to do an analysis in terms of, you know, which part of your system is taking up the most resources, definitely use this tool because it will give you a better overview on what's actually happening, especially if you have a lot of customizations. So now, so while all the information is there, all the analysis is there, it's, you know, some of the information is not I suppose, easily understandable. Like there are examples such as performance health dashboards, record pages, monitor, page time summary, and things like that. Very useful, but sometimes you need additional help. So you'll find new help links available for those. And then there's been some changes made to the personal information or PI removal to improve usability and performance in the user interface when you are loading large numbers of records in the UI. All right. Okay, and now we are on to some enhancement, the suite approvals area. So this is the exciting bit I was talking about. So there's been a new enhancement where we can now use email approvals. And so what you can do is you can actually send out emails to approvers. You can do that now, but now you can actually include a link that says approve or reject within the body of the email. And when someone clicks it, it will automatically approve or reject the transaction. So in the last release, sorry, I can't remember if it was last release or the release before that, they introduced bendable approvals via NetSuite app. So this is also supported on your mobile login as well. So the email alerts will be sent for users to review so that they can just approve or reject with one click. There will be a log of all of the email approvals. So you can review the audit trail of that, so that, and that will improve some flexibility and create quicker transaction approvals. So while this has actually been made available in Suite approvals, it is a utilities NetSuite email capture plugin. And what that means is that you can use this email approval routing on any of your approval workflows. It doesn't have to be a Suite approval workflow. So that's good news. A few other things they've also added in the Suite approvals email approval is that you can set expiration date. So you can say that, okay, that approval email is only going to be valid for 30 days. If they don't approve in that time, it's going to expire. That link to approve. You can also set the user account that's going to send out any errors. And then you can also set PDF templates that will be used for email attachments. So in that email, if you've noticed before, there was a link where you can click in and view the PDF of the bill. So that's our Suite approvals. Now we're going to move on to the accounting space. Okay, I'll just quickly talk about some general enhancements first, and then we'll move on into more specific areas. So there's a new beta version of the Auto Matching Suite app. So a lot of NetSuite clients use the GL Matching Suite app to match corresponding transactions and then close all of the entries. So in addition to this, the new release is going to come with a beta version of the Auto Matching tool, in which all transactions for AR and AP can be automatically matched. So this automation is going to run in the background every 15 minutes, and that will reduce any manual work that will be needed to finish the reconciliation. So if you would like to actually test this out, just be mindful, it is a beta bundle. If you would like to test this out, you will need to send an email to NetSuite support or just let us know, and then we can organize that for you. But after the beta version is then confirmed, then all accounts using the GL Matching Suite app will be updated. There's just one small enhancement in the fixed asset management space. The tax method subtab has been removed from asset record page, and then the alternate depreciation method will now be available in the depreciation history subtab as well. There's also new behavior for unbilled receivables using grouping. So all unbilled receivable adjustment journal entries or contract assets will now post to the revenue elements deferred revenue account. Previously, it will be determined by the account for that you have set up under the account preference for it. And then there's also one other new accounting preference. So that's exclude contract assets from FX reclassification, and that controls whether the foreign currency revaluation will occur during the deferred revenue reclassification. Lastly, we've just got one improvement in the tax reporting framework, which now supports multi-book accounting. You can generate tax reports using specific accounting books other than just your primary book. So to be able to use this, you must obviously have a localization suite app installed that will provide your localized tax reports to support these. Okay, now moving on to vendors purchasing and receiving. So in the new release, you can set a default vendor payment account preference. So you can set it on 3 different levels. You have your company level, so you set a company-wide accounting preference, and then you've got your subsidiary level, so you set your subsidiary level preference, and then also one at the individual vendor level. So any individual preferences will always override preferences that are set on a higher level. So if you've got, a default vendor for your company, but then you've got a different one at the vendor level, that will then override whatever's at your company level. So these preferences are going to affect the account field on 3 transaction types. You've got your vendor prepayments and bill payments. Sorry, 2 transaction types. And so this relates to a change in the standard bill payment and vendor prepayment forms. The pay field is now going to be the first field in the 2 forms. And the account, subsidiary, and currency fields will be unavailable until you enter the pay field. So you have to enter that first. And so that will then pull down all the preferences and it's going to populate the fields. In the new release, you can also enable the advanced PDF and HTML templates feature for vendor bills and credits. So this is quite an exciting piece that I think some have been waiting for. I know some have already had customizations made to be able to do this, but now NetSuite natively is going to offer the opportunity to print vendor bills and vendor credits. So to print a bill or bill credit using the standard PDF, you just click print next to the record in the list page, or you can also go to the individual bill or bill credit and then print from there as well. Okay. You can also create a bill directly from item receipt. So when you enable the advanced receiving feature, you can click on the bill button on an item receipt transaction to create the bill. If the quantities on the item receipt and the purchase order are different, NetSuite will deduct the quantity on the item receipt from the purchase order. So that means that you can then manage the creation of the billing information if your purchase order is split into multiple receipts. So which is really good. So in the past, you could only bill the entire purchase order, and then you'd have to manually change. But now you can actually bill it directly from your item receipt. So if you had 3 item receipts for 1 purchase order, it means you can then create 3 bills without having to manipulate the vendor bill. So that's quite a good enhancement, I reckon. And then lastly, we can also set purchase contract maximum amounts on request for quote transaction. So there's a purchase contract maximum amount field that's going to be added to the award subtab on the request for quote page. So if you use approval routing, this field will determine the required approval level of the purchase contract. So after you enable the approval routing feature and you set the preference for purchase contracts, then that field will become a field that is required. Okay, moving on to just a few changes in the banking space. So one thing that's actually quite important, and I would highly recommend that everyone takes note of this, is the deprecation of the reconcile bank statement and reconcile credit card statement pages. So there are already 2 different ways of reconciling bank statements in NetSuite. So you've got your reconcile bank statement, so that's without uploading your bank statement. So this is the old-fashioned way of doing it. So basically you enter all your transactions, you put your start and end balance, and you reconcile it. The new way, which has been available for the last few years now, is the reconcile account statement. That's the one where you upload your bank statements and then you match that against the transactions in NetSuite. So the old menu option of the old version is going to be deprecated in the new release. So what that means is that you do have to move on to doing it using the reconcile account statement. So what that means for starters, the first thing you have to do really is go into all your bank GL accounts and tick that box that says reconcile account statement page. So that it becomes available for the new reconciliation, and then you can test it now before it becomes compulsory. Any bank accounts that are created after the new release will automatically be checked for that option. So let us know if you need any help in this space. We can definitely take you through some training for that. There are some enhancements to the bank import. There will be a partially completed status when you do bank and credit card account imports. Also, any specific errors will be shown and users will have the ability to edit and correct. And then one last one would be clearing account transactions. So users can now mark cleared pending submission on a transaction and then submit. This will then be added to the review tab. So this is for transactions that users know that has been cleared, but the matching transactions are still to be imported. So you can still undo these cleared transaction if you've accidentally incorrectly reconciled them. Okay. Foreign currency revaluation. So it's just one minor enhancements here. So at the moment, when you actually process realized gains or loss for your foreign currency revaluation, it usually is posted together with the payment transaction. So it's completely linked together. So for example, if you void the payment, it will void your revaluation. So it will be shown on the back page of the payment. In the new release, the realized gain or loss transaction will be posted as a separate transaction and linked back to the source transaction or the payment transaction. So the main thing that you'll need to do in this space, really, if you have any customizations that rely on the payment transactions as the source for the amounts that are being posted to the realized gain or loss account, please update those customizations. Some examples would be custom forms, scripts, workflows, integrations, and reports, etc. All right. We've got some enhancements in the One World area. So there is a new feature that will be introduced called centralized purchasing and billing. So this enables you to receive orders and also fulfill vendor returns across multiple subsidiaries. So this is going to actually provide a flexible item receipt process and allows you to avoid unnecessary order transfers between locations. So you'll need to enable this under enable features and items and expenses. So once it's been enabled, item and expense line items on purchase orders will contain new target subsidiary and target location columns. The target subsidiary and target location can be different to the main subsidiary and location field. So the subsidiary and location field would depend on the purchase order, where the purchase order was raised, but where it was received could be different. So it lets you target a single purchase order at multiple subsidiaries and locations. So when you set a different one, different subsidiary or location there, you are overriding the actual subsidiary and location. So after you receive the items, each target subsidiary will create its own item receipt. Subsidiaries can create the item receipt from the received orders page or directly from the purchase order. Users can then create vendor bills and vendor payments for the main subsidiary location, but the receipt has to be done at the whichever subsidiary is actually receiving the item. So automatically as well, what's been introduced is the corresponding cross charges. So when the accounting period closes, you'll be able to generate intercompany cross charges. So you won't need to do any extra work on this. So this will simplify the purchase flow and save you some time and any vendor bill variances as well can be posted, and it's also compatible with centralized purchasing and billing, so you can use both methods. So when you post a variance, the journals will be generated under the receiving inventory or target subsidiary. Okay, and we just talked about the purchase orders, item receipts, and vendor bills, and same again will apply for your vendor return authorizations as well. Okay, so we talked about cross charges before. So up to now, cross charges are generally only done in your period end close. In fact, it can only be done in your period end close as a period end task. But now there's been a new menu option introduced under transactions financial manage intercompany cross charges. And so you'll be able to generate cross charges outside of the period end close. It doesn't, just something to note though, the menu item won't be automatically added to your custom center. So you must get an administrator to manually add the menu item to your custom centers after you've enabled the feature. And intercompany netting. So if this is something that you use, it will now support all classifications and custom segments. So if the netted transactions already have a department class location or custom segments, NetSuite will group the lines in the netting settlement based on these classifications. And then there is also support for the currency exchange rate types feature, which lets you store multiple currency exchange rates for a currency pair and date. So when you're using intercompany netting and when you're using generating cross charges, you'll be able to use your currency exchange rate type. And lastly, I just want to touch on some changes in the electronic payments. So the entity bank details page is going to be renamed bank details, and they are going to add a new drop-down field for subsidiaries. So in the new release, if you have multi-subsidiary customers or vendor accounts, you'll be able to assign a primary bank to each subsidiary. You'll find a new drop-down field in the bank details page, and you can use that to assign a subsidiary for a bank. When an account has multiple subsidiaries, you can then enable you can then assign one subsidiary to each entity bank. You can also create multiple bank records per entity based on the account's base country of operation, and then you can process transactions belonging to a different subsidiary. So sorry, I've just moved too quickly there. Okay, just one last thing I wanted to note. So you can only do this if the transactions company and entity bank templates actually match the subsidiary and the entity bank is set to primary. If the subsidiary field is not blank, then the transactions related only to that subsidiary will be processed in the Suitelets. So if you have any customizations on the bank details page, you will need to update them to include the new subsidiary field and update any web services requests that if you happen to use that to create an entity bank. There is also support for vendor prepayments as well in the electronic payments. So you can now pay vendor prepayments as an EFT batch and generate a file as you would with your EFT payments. So that concludes all the enhancements in the administration and accounting space. Thanks for listening. And I'll now pass on to my colleague, Michelle, to take you through warehouse distribution, I think.
Thank you, Mira. Okay, I'll quickly share my screen. Are you seeing the correct screen? Just double checking. It
looks good, Michelle.
Yeah, that's good. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much. So NetSuite 2021.1 includes the following enhancements to the order management feature. So there's a new order management navigation. We've got some invoice group feature enhancements, auto close back order enhancements, and order guide enhancements. Currently, order management in NetSuite Classic Center is available from sales and inventory sections in the transactions tab. The Classic Center is the default NetSuite view for administrators and payroll setup roles. As of 2020.1, this functionality will be moved to a new order management section by going to transactions, order management. The following functionality will be moved to the order management navigation section: allocate orders, commit orders, check item availability, reallocate items, order allocation alerts, management fulfillment requests, create a wave, view pick tasks, view fulfill orders, mark orders packed, and mark orders shipped. The new order management navigation section will also include navigation to the order management dashboard that will automatically display the following portlets: The order management dashboard links displays links to channel management exceptions, exceptions management, and automation processes. These shortcuts can help you allocate and reallocate supplier to demand. The order scorecard displays key performance indicators such as average inventory, inventory value, inventory turnover for period, sales order volume, and fill rate. The new fill rate KPI metric measures how well the order is being fulfilled on time. It helps you to understand how well you are delivering orders on time to meet the customer's demand. The Order Operations by Channel portlet provides an overview of supply allocations by sales channel. When sales channel allocation is enabled, data is collected from the sales order in the last and current quarter. The portlet displays a summary of sales orders in different channels. For example, potential revenue from sales, whether the gross profit feature is enabled, or profit by channels. Sales order allocation alerts. The sales order allocation alerts portlet displays allocation issues that help you understand potential order delivery obstacles. Then the allocation automation status portlet enables you to monitor the automated supply allocation process over the past 7 days. Use this portlet to monitor orders that are being processed. There are 2 enhancements to the invoice group feature. The Add to Invoice Group button appears on the invoice record when an invoice is eligible for grouping. You can now add an invoice to an invoice group from the invoice record. If an invoice is eligible for grouping, an Add Invoice Group button appears on the invoice. A list of available invoice groups appears when you click on the Add to Group button. For more information, see the help topic, adding an invoice to an invoice group from the invoice record. You can now also add invoices not associated to a sales order to an invoice group. NetSuite now provides you with the ability to group an invoice that does not have an associated sales order. This enhancement lets you group invoices for projects and subscriptions. It also allows you to group imported invoices. The Auto Close Back Order Suite app includes the following enhancements. The Auto Close Back Orders preference is replaced by the Items to Auto Close preference. Using the new field, you can decide whether the Auto Close Back Orders script runs on the fill kill items or excludes the fill kill items. The fill kill item exemption page is now called the fill kill items page. You can now import fill kill item using CSV import. For more information, see the help topic, Auto Close Back Orders. The Order Guides Suite app includes the following enhancements. In the Customer Center role, you can now show or hide the display of the current price in the Order Guide entry window or pop-up window. In the Order Guide entry pop-up window of a sales order, the following item filter criteria are removed. Item must have a base price or absolute price defined in the default currency of the customer. For Customer Center role, the absolute price must be in the default currency of the customer. An item can now be added to the order guide regardless of the price level set for the item in the customer record. For more information, you can have a look at the help topic, Order Guides. I will now hand you over to Paul Matthews, who will be taking you through professional services.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Mira, before that.
Looking good, Paul.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Sorry about that.
All good.
So good afternoon, everybody. Have this afternoon, wherever you are. I'm going to take you briefly, well, the release highlights of 2021 for the projects area. I'll start off, as everybody does, with Zoom caveats about, I'll apologize for my barking dog that usually barks just when you don't want it. And the roadworks that suddenly started outside my house yesterday, which is also very convenient. So moving on into that. So first changes, projects now becomes or renamed as to suite projects in 2021. Some of the key features users of projects will pretty much know, but it's all about bringing more into the projects arena and also making it more visible for the project manager or whoever is the key users for those projects. So the first one, project purchases. So purchases can now be initiated from within the project itself. So this gives you greater visibility from within the project. So again, the project owner, the project manager, whatever your terminology is of who's running the project, can get an all-round view of what's happening within the project and be able to initiate and also the approvals with those initiations from within the project. Project expense report policies. So there's been some enhancements in this area. So it's the ability to enforce company policies and rules. So there's greater transparency around messages, and I apologize for the slightly poor screenshot there, trying to get too much information onto a PowerPoint slide, never a good move. So the message there is, it's presenting you as to why, on this example, as to why my expense may have been rejected. And it links back to my policy and gives the user a message as to what's going on. This can happen at a line level. And now also layered on that is we can apply line level limits to expense items. It's a bit of a mouthful. So not just the whole policy, but on individual line items. Just some more screenshots there of what goes on. Apologies, there's quite a few things happening there, but it's quite important to understand that there's some good changes, some good enhancements going on. The red line appears, as you can see in that top right screenshot there, of what happens when something's broken. You get the message presented to you to say you've broken your company expense policy. Do you want to go and have a look? Show the policies button is highlighted, or you want to continue, which will present that one on not to go through the process. Next, timesheets. So enhancements into the timesheets area. Employees can now update a submitted timesheet. There's a new button there that you'll see in that screenshot there. It's called the retract button. So when it's gone on to an approval status highlighted there, saying pending approval, you can retract that. In other words, the old, oops, I've made a mistake, I need to bring that back and change it. So you click on that retract button, brings the timesheet back, ready to be submitted again. This can operate at a line level as well as the whole timesheet level. You also have the ability to send notifications. So depending what your business processes are, you could send a notification to the approver to say that the timesheet has been retracted. So therefore, I'm making some changes. I've made a bit of a mess up, so I'm going to redo it and resubmit it. So the approver is not confused as to what may be going on. Again, depending on your business processes. The retract button is not available on the mobile yet, but that's coming. So ends my brief cover of what's in the 2021 release. If you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A. Otherwise, I will hand over to my esteemed colleague, Lass.
And Beatie. All right, there we go. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I must admit, I'm a bit sad that I have to do this in a hotel room remote because I like the whole drinking alcohol and hugging my friends and colleagues and clients and everything else. I think it's a big part of the community. It's what I like about the job, but hopefully the next one can be on site and we can all be together. Let me have a chat about what's new inside of manufacturing supply chain area. The supply planning workbench has had a little bit of new functionality put in there. Now, I am aware that a lot of our customers may not be using the workbench yet. We will be talking a bit more about that later. Well, I will, but in this particular section, the things to note is that blanket purchase orders and inbound shipment records are now included, which they weren't before. So that's a handy addition, I would say. We can do some date-based views, which we couldn't do before. And another thing that I really like is that the planning repository can be analyzed via save searches. Again, a lot of these words might be a bit foreign to you guys if you haven't used it, and we'll talk a bit about that later. And here's a big one. The refreshes of the repository can be set to be done outside of areas. So this is something we've been screaming for years when it comes to running the supply plans at set times. And that can now be done indirectly when using the more advanced feature that is the repository. So that's all really good news, I think, if you're into supply planning. And manufacturing changes. This one is the only one that I thought was kind of nice, and it kind of should have been there already. So those of you that use routing and WIP on your work orders and use demand planning will know that until now we had to manually populate our work order lead time to match whatever was in our routing. And I always thought, why can't it just populate what's on our routing, because we've already done the hard work. And so now it does. The screenshots that we have here are from the current edition. So in the new release, there's going to be an option to auto calculate the work order variable and fixed lead times that will be sourced from the routings associated with the BOM and the location. So that is good news as well. I think handy. It's more of a quality of life update more than anything, but definitely makes sense to tie them in together. Manufacturing mobile. This is a big one for me because, I mean, the challenge with the manufacturing mobile suite app so far has been that it works, but it only works with back flushing. So every time the question came up, can we do WIP? Can we issue? Can we support routing? The answer was always no, you have to use advanced manufacturing. Otherwise, you won't be able to. It appears that in 2021.1, we will now be able to do this. I think that is amazing news, to be honest, and I can't wait to play with it and work with it for some of you guys, hopefully. The screenshots I've got here on screen is from the current standard mobile app. I haven't had my hands on the new functionality just yet, but I've been told it's coming. It's in the release notes, and I, for one, am super excited to start working with that. On that note, I'm gonna hand it back Michelle. If you do have any questions on this, feel free to put them inside of the Q&A, and I will hope to get to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Les. I will just go ahead and share my screen again. Awesome. So I'm just going to talk about Suite Analytics workbooks, but before we start, I just want to do a bit of a recap on what we saw on 2020.2 release. So the latest release allowed you to connect multiple data sets to a single Suite Analytics workbook. They also provided you with the ability to add a table view onto your Suite Analytics portlet. So in this release, NetSuite introduced native language support for Suite Analytics workbooks, letting users analyze and explore business data and associated workbook fields in their language of choice. This initial feature set includes a wide range of fields that can be localized, such as the workbook name, description, and common commands like save as. The workbook user interface provides additional editable fields such as pivot and chart tab names, chart titles, pivot table fields, and other outlined in the help documentation. With a new conditional color formatting functionality, users can highlight workbook pivot tables or table cells with colors based on numeric values defined for specific cells and ranges. This helps call attention to important data points such as deadlines, at-risk tasks, budget items, and also make large data sets more digestible by visually organizing data within large tables by color. One of my favorites is the new calculated measure functionality. It supports date filtering within pivot tables, letting users see results from 2 periods side by side and conduct comparative analysis faster and with more confidence. I'm now going to head over to my NetSuite new release page just to demo some of it. Oh, and before I actually start on the demo, there's a new My Transactions workbook, and this includes transactions of a user for the previous one here. It provides detailed overview of inter-transactions in the transactions currency, and it provides summary of by currency and by period for optimal operational reporting. So let's go over to my demo. So on my new release, I've opened a workbook that I've already created. And as you can see, you can see the highlight or the conditional highlighting that I've done there. I'm going to show you how you can do that. And I'm also going to show you how you can actually add 3 calculated measure columns. And let's start by just clicking on the little plus sign over here. And I am going to click on pivot because I want to replicate what I've done. I'm going to add items in the rows. I'm just going to click apply. I'm going to put customers in column. I'm going to add quantity as a measure and amount as a measure. Next, what I want to do is I want to calculate total cost. Now, I do have my average cost field here. And I'm just going to add it, and I'm going to show you why I'm going to use a calculated measure to actually, instead of the average cost field. So the average cost field actually gives me the average cost for a single item and not the quantity sum of 8. So I am going to remove this one and show you what that calculated measure field will look like. So I'm going to click on the calculated measure field, and I'm going to go total cost. Then just some useful tips. If you go control space, it actually gives you all the options available. So it gives you all of your operators and then also some of the fields. So you can either use control space to create your formula, or you can use your drag and drop functionality, and I'll demo both of them in this demonstration. So first of all, I want to work out average cost. So I'm going to take average cost, and if I want to use control space again, I can times that with my quantity. Now at the bottom, it actually shows me that the definition is valid, and therefore if I click apply, I won't get any error messages. It asks me to refresh the icon, and now if you're going to have a look, you'll be able to see that my total cost column now displays. I can go ahead and add an additional column, and I'm going to call it margin. And this is purely to show you how the formulas work. So if you're not completely happy with the formula, or yeah, it's not about how to work out or how to calculate margin. So this time I am going to go and use my drag and drop functionality. So in order to work out margin, I want to take sales minus my cost. So as you can see, you do not see that calculated cost, calculated measure that I entered. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to use my parenthesis. So I'm going to put my little bracket over here. I'm going to say that it's going to be my sales amount, and I'm dragging it there, minus my average cost times quantity. And I'm going to close the bracket again. Now you see that there's a definition is not valid. The reason for that is because I didn't use the correct parenthesis, and once I actually add that additional close bracket, it actually tells me that the definition is valid. So do pay attention to that, because you will not be able to apply the calculated measure if you do not have the correct definition. And I'm going to click apply and just go and refresh it again. Next, what I want to do is I want to work out a margin percentage, and I'm just going to go and create that same thing. I'm going to give it a name. And I am going to use my parentheses again, and I'm going to go, it's amount net minus average cost times my quantity bracket, and this time I want to divide it by, let's just close that bracket properly. I want to divide that by my amount net again. So as you can see, it gives me that valid definition again, and I'm going to click apply on that and refresh. What you'll notice is this gives me a decimal value and not a percentage value. I can change the field for that. So if I hover over the field, you've got the three little dots. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click format. On the side, you can actually add a percentage. I can decide to override it if I want to, so I can change the negative value, how I read it, etc. But in this case, I'm not going to be bothered doing that. I'm going to click OK, and I am going to click refresh again. And now you'll see these margins displaying in a percentage value. Now, I want to add some conditional highlighting, and you can add it to any of these fields if you want. I'm just going to do it on the margin percentage field. So I'm going to click on the three dots, and I am going to click on conditional formatting and manage conditional formatting. First, what I want to do is I want to say that it's less highlighted if the value is less than 0. I do not like that red value, so I can go and change the custom color to a brighter red, or to a red that I enjoy. I can add an additional conditional value by just clicking the little plus sign. I can also remove it by just clicking the little bin sign there as well. Now, because this reads in a decimal value and not a percentage value, you would need to just put a decimal value in here. So I'm just going to say 0.30. I want to highlight it, and I want to highlight it as yellow. And I'm going to go 0.30 to 0.5. I'm going to highlight it in another color. And I'm going to go for my last one. If any value is greater than 50%, I want it to be green. And I'm going to click refresh. And now it's added that conditional value there. I can also decide to sort item by margin. Do note that you can't do it by color at this stage, but you can do it by margin if you want to. So what I want to see is I want to see the lowest margin first. So I'm going to go and click on sort item. And I'm going to go margin percentage. Do I want it smaller or greater? I do want the smallest value first. So I'm going to click apply on that. And now you'll see that it will add my lower value margins first. So then I can easily identify which items aren't making any money for me. Last but not least, if you do want to use the native language, you can set it by just changing the language over here. And I'm going to change it to a language that I actually more or less can understand. Probably not thoroughly, but I sort of understand it. So I'm going to click reload on this. My workbook will appear in the language that I selected. And here's some of the examples that I mentioned earlier. You can actually override this, and you can actually change to the correct terminology. So it still allows you, for anything that wasn't translated, you can still override that. And I will quickly just change my settings back to English before I start or over to Jonathan. Great, I'm handing it over to Jonathan Williams. He's gonna talk about the technical enhancements for this new release.
Thanks, Michelle. That was a great run through of the upcoming changes with the Suite Analytics workbooks.
Thank you.
So a couple of changes that are coming out with the latest release is that NetSuite is a OIDC provider. What that means is you can actually utilize NetSuite to authenticate with outbound single sign-on. So it allows you to log into third-party applications directly from your NetSuite account. So it means you can utilize that to, for example, log in from NetSuite directly into your email inbox, for example. Other updates that have coming out is updates to the APM Suite app, which Mira went into a little bit earlier. It's a great tool for obviously being able to monitor the performance on your account. If you don't already have that bundle installed, I definitely recommend installing it so you can get a good overview of how your account is performing. In the new release, there is a new dashboard for the REST integrations, which will allow you to monitor all your new integrations that are using REST, which NetSuite are spending a lot of time developing. The biggest changes with that is the REST services you would have seen have been in beta, and a number of new record types such as sales orders, invoices, and customers are all becoming general availability in 21.1. That means that if you're utilizing the beta services, you'll be able to take full advantage of the general availability in 21.1. They're the biggest changes that are coming from a technical standpoint relating to integrations and performance management. And now I'll hand over to Brett, who will go through supply allocation engine.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Today, I'd just like to quickly run you through the NetSuite supply allocation engine. It's a currently available enhancement that's free, and it's something that I'm particularly excited about at the moment. And it's particularly useful if inventory allocation to sales is currently causing you issues. And this is something that we're seeing and something we're dealing with our current supply constraints, and it's predominantly international imports, etc. Great. So yeah, what's so useful about it? Why is it so cool, and why am I so excited about it? Well, firstly, it's because future supply is available to be allocated along with current stock on hand. So it's pushing out the horizon of supply, if you like. It provides specific insights into supply dates and customer orders ETAs, which means stock is no longer just committed to current stock on hand. The supply engine allocates product orders to open POs, containers, and future work orders. It also matches a future sales order to a future supply and leaves current inventory available to meet new sales orders. And that's particularly useful as well. It can match complete order supply or partial supply depending on requirements. The allocation type allows you to specify whether the allocation should be flexible and able to change in the future, or firmed up so that it does not become undone by changes that might happen later. So at this point, I've probably got you hooked on the usefulness of it. So we'll have a quick look at how it's set up and how you enable it. We can turn on the supply allocation engine by enabling it under the company setup. In doing this, we really need to look at it in conjunction with the key drivers that we're going to use. So next screen, thanks, thank you. We need to know and maintain shipping dates or production dates on supply orders. Maintaining the required by date to meet the customer delivery on demand orders. NetSuite supply allocation engine will then use these dates to match the demand allocation to the appropriate supply order to fulfill the requirement. And how do we do that? We start doing this by defining the order allocation strategies. What we need to know is what are our future inventory types, as future inventory supply types. These can be purchase orders, transfer orders, works orders, and inbound shipments. We need to know our time allocation fences. What periods do we need, and what periods are the allocations to apply to? We need to know the allocation method. When do we want to allocate stock? We want to know allocation quantities. Are they available or complete quantities that we need to allocate? And do we firm these quantities or reserve them so that the system can allocate if required? As a fallback, we also need to set up on the item record, we need to configure the item to account for available to promised lead times. The lead time is used if no current or future supply is available. So what's the net result? What does it give us? What do we get to? Here's an example of a sales order that is placed against existing stock. We now have an allocated supply field on the timeline. When we click the link, a window provides details of the item allocation. In this example, it's been allocated and committed directly to current stock on hand. But what if our sales order is required 3 months out? So in this example, the sales order, again, has the allocation quantity on the line item. And we see that this sales order is allocated to a purchase order arriving prior to that date. It matches the order to the closest supply date, leaving our current inventory free, which means that we're not pre-allocating stock that's sitting around, and we're not tying up stock. We're keying the orders directly to the purchase orders that they need to be. We can also cross-reference this on the purchase order. So again, there's an allocation field, and it has a similar mode. We can now see the sales order that's allocated and viewed along with their required by date. But of course, in the real world, things do change. And what are our mechanisms to reallocate if we need to? We do this basically in 2 different ways. We can either reallocate items. Here we can reallocate specific quantities against specific orders when the stock comes in. Sorry. Yeah, and secondly, we've also got reallocate orders. Now this is a much more powerful allocate function. It allows us to review commitments and reallocate orders according to various criteria. And this function also can be defined as a scheduled task. All right, so that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the NetSuite supply allocation engine. Thank you for bearing with me with my issues of not being able to present it on my laptop. But we've got there, and I'm really excited about this feature. And I think it's a seriously good enhancement that many people should consider. If you'd like a deeper dive into it, please reach out. We're happy to run you through it. But in the meantime, I'll hand you over to Simon Bernard, and he can talk you through Save Search best practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks for that. I'm just going to share my screen actually. Is that all good, Andrew?
Nailed it, mate.
Great. Cool. So I'm just going to give you some insights into some best practices on Save Searches. So the first tip would be that if you when you go into creating your search, just have a think about what type of search you want to create. So if you want to create a transaction Save Search and you want to go back and grab some custom information, you would start your journey as a transaction Save Search. So if you wanted to interrogate transactional information, but then also bring in some customer attributes from that table, you can see here that at the bottom of the column section in the Save Search, all the subtables that this search can get to will be at the bottom of the Save Search. If this was a customer Save Search that we were creating, you wouldn't necessarily be able to access the transactions table because NetSuite generally works backwards. So if you're in a transaction, you can go back to the customer table. If you're in a customer Save Search, you can't necessarily go forwards to grab that information. Another tip that we could have is if you've got an existing Save Search that has 90% of what you're interested in, but you might have a couple of fields that aren't in it, my suggestion would be that you take an existing Save Search, do a Save As, and then you take that search that is almost there and add fields to it. This obviously then saves you a lot of time in terms of creating a Save Search. And also the search that you've got might have additional things that you just have in there out of the box. Another tip that we've got here is you can use safe searches very similar in a way that Suite Analytics does. You can use it to do conditional formatting. So, and it can be helpful to someone who's only interested in things that over $10,000 in this instance. So I might be interested in seeing all my orders, but I want to be notified visually of all of the sales orders where they're greater than 10,000. It's very visual. It gives people information, and it can draw their attention to the things that are really important. Again, you could use highlighting for things such as invoices that are overdue. Again, you might want to see all invoices overdue, but the ones that are over 90 days might be the ones that you need to get your teams to follow up on. So that's my piece on safe searches. I'm now going to hand you over to Lass, who's going to talk to you about supply planning workbenches again. So yeah, over to you, Lass.
Thanks, Simon. I wanted to talk a little bit about this because I know a lot of our customers are using the sort of older / legacy / most sort of currently used version of NetSuite supply and demand planning. So talking about the workbench, we kind of have to talk about a few prerequisites for that workbench to work. So just to get you excited, the workbench is sort of like the GRI the way it should have always been. So for those of you that use the gross requirements inquiry report, you will know how limited it is and how there's other things we would like to do. And I know from experience, having built a lot of custom reports to try and do what this workbench, that it's something that has been needed for a long time. Last time there was a Suite world before Corona world, we had a lot of discussions, and NetSuite was telling me that we will bring the supply and demand planning engine into core NetSuite. And I thought, yeah, whatever. But it seems like it's happening, and it has happened. So that's quite good. Positively surprised. So some of this has been out for about 1 or 2 releases now, but it's getting more mature. Now we need to talk about the supply plan repository. First of all, what's that? Now we need to go and turn it on. So this is for, you must have advanced inventory, demand planning, material requirements planning functionality turned on. So when we turn on MRP, we get the option to work with what's called the supply plan repository. And it's pretty much exactly where all the data used to sit that was sitting in the background that we could never access when we ran the supply plan. So it sits in the background. It has all the DRP settings from the items, all the transactions, etc., to be used for planning purposes. So now this has been streamlined into what's called a supply plan repository that we can also use safe searches to access, which is amazing because we never could do that before. One of the new things coming up is that we can manage the refresh of the repository. So a lot of you guys would recognize the challenge with running the supply plan daily, needing a person to tick the button because for whatever reason, NetSuite wouldn't let us script the supply plan to run outside of hours. Extreme pain in the rear. Now this lets us set a timing for when we want that supply plan repository to be refreshed. So that is amazing news, I think, from a user perspective. Not only does it let us do that, it lets us do a complete refresh or a net change. Man, this is like, wow. So we don't have to do the whole thing and wait for the whole thing in my distribution network that has 18 locations and 4 subsidiaries. We can just post the changes into the repository. So I think this is amazing news. It's a great way of doing it. I think we're now at a stage where we should try and transition customers towards this that are already using the traditional supply and demand planning inside of NetSuite, which we can obviously help you with. So that leads us on to the supply plan definition. So what is a supply plan definition? It's more cool stuff. So basically, before we were limited by running the supply plan at either a set number of location within the distribution network or not. That was pretty much it across subsidiaries. Now we can set up and create multiple supply plan definitions. So this is what sets different planning criteria, different horizons, items, locations. So we can set a rule set that defines what supply we want to look at data when running the supply plan. We can have multiple of these, and then we can compare them against each other. We can do what if scenario analysis, which is really cool. And so think about it. We have the repository, we can post our data in there. We have the data lives in a repository that we can access. It is static, it's separate from live transactions. We can refresh that in full. We can just commit and it changes. On top of that, we can have as many supply plan definitions as we want to interrogate the data outside of the repository. And bam, the moment we've all been waiting for, now we can use the supply planning workbench. So this really is the GRI on speed. That's just what I'm going to call it. The beauty here is you'll notice in my planning workbench, I've got the supply plan definition. So this gives us all the different planning messages that used to be generated and sit on every single item by location supply plan. It's a bit nerdy now, I know, bear with me, but it exposes that in a view where we can look at locations and items and demand type, supply type, all of these details that up until now was a pain to do because we had to look at the GRI for every single item by every single location. So now we start looking at this globally across our business, and there's warning messages, exceptions, etc., to manage what happens in our supply chain when we put a new demand or a new supply in there, which I think is very exciting. Just an example, I've taken a few screen dumps here. You'll notice I've got an item on the left, could be an assembly. We can drill down to the component level and see what the status of those items are as well. A bit of a blah blah about what the supply planning workbench shows. So, but basically all of these details that it was hard to get to before, we can now get. I believe you'll all get a copy of this. You can read it later, or you can have a look at NetSuite Help, which has a lot of good information on this as well. But this is sort of just a high level detail of what it lets us do. I want to look at it again because I think it's so pretty. And what I want to look at here as well is we've got exceptions here, right? So you can look at the exceptions from your individual supply plans in a consolidated view. So these ones are planned transfers that are estimated to be late. So there's suggestions to push forwards and backwards. We can now push forwards and backwards demand and supply transactions. So yeah, I'm very excited about this. Maybe it's weird to be excited about, but I think it's amazing to see this coming out of NetSuite. So maturing a lot. I kind of liken it to what happened with has been happening with manufacturing. We're getting a lot more features that it's just so great to see. And the same is happening on the supply plan and demand planning side of things. There's a lot more in there as well that we don't have time to talk about today, but I would like to leave all of you pretty excited about this. And with the caveat that obviously this only works when we have all the data we need to run these scenarios. Otherwise it doesn't. So if we're willing to put in the time and the hard yards to get to that stage, I think we now have a much better argument for using NetSuite as our supply planning engine. On that note, I'm going to hand it back over to Michelle to talk about metrics and KPIs. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. We'll do the same and just quickly share my screen. So when manufacturers, distributors, and retailers consistently make profitable decisions, you can bet there's a team consistently poring over data to understand supply chain, sales forecast, process efficiencies, and customer trends. Collecting good, timely data with careful analysis to guide proper business decisions is critical to a thriving business today. Every company can and should collect data to inform business decisions. With that in mind, we've collected a set of key performance indicators that every product company should be monitoring consistently. Most organizations will need to go beyond what we're presenting here to understand the unique circumstances of their own suppliers, processes, and customers. But starting with this set will form a solid foundation for developing the right KPIs for any organization. Let's move to demand planning and procurement. Many of the metrics here depend on historical data. Knowing what you sold last month is helpful in understanding what you expect to sell this month. Knowing what you've sold each month for the last few years is a lot more helpful. With more data, your forecast should become more accurate over time, since you can spot seasonal trends and changes in the customer's demand. While sales leaders will typically be responsible for sales forecasts, finance teams can track forecast accuracy. The formula looks as followed. You've got 1 minus actual sales minus the forecasted value divided by actual sales. If the sales and forecasts are the same, you'll get a forecast accuracy of 1, since the actual sales minus forecasted sales will be 0. Here's some examples. So I've got forecasted units of 1,000 and actual sales of 920 units. The forecast accuracy will be calculated by taking 1 minus the 920, which is your actual sales, minus the 1,000, your forecasted units, divided by your actual sales, again, 920. This leaves us with a decimal value of 1.087. So our forecast was too high by 8.7. The actual sale been higher, say 1,200 units, then our decimal value will be 0.83. Our forecast value was too low by 16.7%. If you do want to work it out in the percentages instead of a decimal value, you can do that by taking 100 times actual sales minus forecast divided by actual sales. Ideally, forecasts gets more accurate with time as your sales leaders have more data to work with. Over time, you expect that forecast errors average out to about 0. Some periods you'll sell a bit more than expected and some less. If forecasts are consistently too high or too low, it's a sign that the forecast process needs revisiting. The same reasoning it can apply to any forecast, such as supply chain demands. Without good handle on your forecasting, other significant problems will follow, from allocating shelf warehouse space to ordering new stock or raw materials or sub-assemblies. Everything hinges on accurate forecasting. Selling products is good, and therefore turning over inventory is good. But a good inventory turnover ratio is very dependent on your industry. Think egg farmers versus cattle ranchers. It's useful to look at overall inventory turnover in a quarter or year, as well as turnover on a product by product basis. Overall inventory turnover is an indication of your company's health. The higher the turnover rate, the healthier the company should be, provided that you're hitting proper margins. When working at a product level, it's just as valid to look at units versus cost of goods sold. Speaking of cost, there are many ways to determine it. For retailers and distributors, the most straightforward approach is cost equals starting inventory plus purchases minus ending inventory. That's what accountants will need. However, that calculation misses indirect costs like stocking, shipping, packing, and some fractions of facility costs like rent, mortgage, utilities, and insurances. Whether or not you include these costs will depend on your goal for the calculation. The full encumbered cost of the product is useful in determining pricing and unit economics, but it's also harder to get right. The more variable costs are, the more you'll want to track them. Likewise, the more closely associated costs are with individual products, the more appropriate it is to include it in your cost of goods calculation. Packaging costs and shipping costs, as well as core product costs, are usually easily associated with each product. On the other hand, adding in fractional costs like utilities, rent, insurances may not provide much insight. View them as an overhead, and looking at overhead cost reduction projects separately is likely more fruitful way to manage those costs. For manufacturers, there's value in looking at cost of goods sold in different ways. First, it's more likely that a product will have dedicated salaries to add into the mix. Depending on the nature of the product and how many products the company produces, you may want to include cost of sales, including marketing and support. However you decide to look at cost of goods sold, make certain that others understand what went into the calculation, what didn't, and why you decided to calculate the number that way. Since cost of goods sold will show up in any other calculations, you'll need to understand what's appropriate to include. Moving inventory isn't what it used to be. Technology can substantially help with maintaining accurate stock numbers, delivering the right products to the right customer at the right time. From barcodes and readers to RFIDs and warehouse automations, there's a lot of ways to ensure that orders are fulfilled accurately and quickly. However, your picking, packing, and shipping orders, you'll want to track your performance. Order fill rate is the number of orders that could be filled immediately from existing stock. It's a straightforward percentage. Order fill rate equals 100 times orders filled from existing stock divided total orders. If you have 200 orders and fill 190 from stock, your order fill rate is 95%. But leaving those 10 customers without products might not be the best business move. Depending on how your product is used by your customers, you might provide some partial shipments so that everyone has at least some of what they need on time. If you can fill the rest of the order before the customer would be due to order again, so that their business may not go uninterrupted. That is everything from me. I will hand you over, and I'm presuming, Andrew, do you know?
Yeah, back to me.
Is it you? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so just wanted to say a big thank you. Look, I'm really mindful that we've run over time and we haven't even done Paul's bit or my bit yet in terms of the new release and the support thing. But look, there was quite a bit there. So I was keen to let the team run through all those new features. You know, some standouts for me was the Suite Analytics Workbook. Since I last created a query in there, looks like there's been a lot of improvements to that. So that's fantastic. Jonathan mentioned the APM bundle. That is a good tool to have in your environment to check on the system performance. If you're unsure how to install a bundle into NetSuite, reach out to the support team and they'll be more than happy to do that for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them. Supply chain seems to be a big theme for today and for this current NetSuite release. We really think that NetSuite's making some inroads around that side of your business and to support you there. So please think into how you might be able to forecast your demand for the products that you're going to sell. Make sure that you've got just the right amount of inventory on hand to sell them if you're an inventory-based business. So in terms of thank you, really want to thank the consultants today. As you can tell, they don't just turn up and start reading from a script. There's a lot of information that they need to collate and put together and prep for these sessions. So really appreciate them taking the time out from all the implementation projects and optimization projects that they're involved in to be part of today. So thank you. Obviously, want to give a big thanks to the NetSuite team. Without NetSuite, we wouldn't be showing you anything really. So look, I'm really pleased to partner with NetSuite with a company that does continually improve and enhance its solution. So that you can get more out of it year on year. And a big thank you for our customers. So you guys that have joined us for today. Liberate would be nothing without you. And Paul Beatie mentioned at the top of the hour that you know, you guys are crucial to the success of Liberate, and we are truly a customer first business. And so if you've got any feedback or input, we'd really love to hear from you. In fact, to that end, we have on our website a page for you just to leave us some remarks on our where is it? It's somewhere there on our blog page. So if it's just concerning our 10-year anniversary, it'd be great to get some thoughts and comments from you. Help us celebrate that anniversary. Really appreciate it. We have recorded today's session. We'll be making that available to you both on our website and our YouTube once we do some editing and fixing up those quiet times. And if you're after a PowerPoint from our presentation today, let me know. I can make sure that we get you a copy of those KPIs that we went through at the end there. Michelle went through those very quickly. So if you want to get a copy of those, feel free to get in touch. We can get those through to you. So look, from now, what we're going to do is move into the next section of the presentation today, and that's really focused around new customers to Liberate. We're going to be going through at the beginning some of the new release processes and procedures. We had a couple of questions around that process, so it'd be great to answer those for you today. So I am now going to hand over to Paul Beatie, who'll be able to take you through that. Paul.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everybody for attending today. I hope you got a lot out of it. So the new release upgrade is a way for you to test your new your system in the new version, and NetSuite provides this free of charge. So what I like to do, particularly for customers who are new to NetSuite, is take you through the whole process of how NetSuite upgrades and the resources that are available to you. So in preparing for a new release, the background of it is that NetSuite is a multi-tenanted cloud-based product, software as a service. So a key facet of what you pay for with your license fee is your upgrades. The upgrades are pushed out by NetSuite. So you don't ever get left behind with these upgrades. So there's a huge benefit to you. As I was talking earlier, 10 years ago, this was, oh my word, how could this possibly happen? Now our problem is that everyone just gets so used to the upgrades that happen every 6 months that they aren't testing. And that's one of the things I want to talk about today. Now, NetSuite works really, really hard for these twice yearly upgrades. And by and large, they do a really good job of upgrading around 25,000 customers worldwide. Besides the advantages of never being left behind, you're never on an old version, it's of course much easier for us to support you if we all know you're on the same version. And just these upgrades just become part of the total cost of ownership. There's never this idea that in 4 years' time, you need to upgrade your version and the pain that I'm sure you've all been through with old on-premise systems. Literally, the upgrades just become routine. That is small and often. So the 2 releases a year that I mentioned, they happen in Q1 and Q3. Now, it's actually a slight bit of a fallacy that everyone is always on the same version of NetSuite. For about a month period, twice a year, people are on the new version and some people are on the old version. And they do that by hemispheres. The US hemisphere, the American hemisphere, is the first to go always. We're the second in the JPAC region. And we quite like being second. Now, something that Andrew's been working on is that we found some of our customers were, their data was on servers that were in the Americas region, which means that they were going in the first wave of upgrades. And also the timing of those upgrades was not sensible for a New Zealand or an Australian-based business. we think we've got them all, but if you feel you're on a server that is in the America's time zone, let us know, and Andrew can sort that out. So it starts around about now for the upgrades, and then it moves through over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Generally, the upgrade starts sometime between Saturday 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. US Pacific time. What that means is that translates to somewhere between 3 and 6 a.m. on Saturday night for Australia and New Zealand. Really important to understand this. You will be offline during that time. Usually the upgrades only take about 30 minutes, although there is an estimate in the new release portlet of how long they are going to take. Now, what I mentioned just earlier is that a lot of our customers who have been using NetSuite for a long time get quite blasé about the version releases, because by and large, things just do get upgraded. Nothing changes with their system. NetSuite's designed to go through these upgrades with very little pain for customers. And when we, some of the that have been to our on-site user groups or customer events, sometimes I turn up with a really big talking stick I got in Samoa that's taller than me, and I bang it on the floor, because it's really important to understand this is an upgrade to your system. So you've got to take it seriously. Now, when the new functionality is upgraded, by default, all the new functionality is switched off. There's some of the functionality that we talked about today you've got to really think about what you need to do to provision, to switch it on. There'll be new training aspects. There'll be testing that you'll need to do. So it comes switched off. Having said that, there are things that can go wrong. For example, the date formats can change. Some of your manual processes and the transitions, for example, from a quote, sales order, item fulfillment, invoice, some of those transitions can become broken depending on any automations that you've created in there or we've created for you. Some of the scripts could break. Some of the automated workflows could break. Some of the integrations could break because the endpoints that they're aiming to have changed, so they need to be tested. And suite apps could break. Although having said that, to be an official NetSuite suite app, the suite app people sign up to say that they were tested and made sure that any integrations or any workings that they do will not break under the new version. So how do we prepare for the upgrades? When I say how do we prepare, how do you prepare as NetSuite administrators or as the people that are most knowledgeable about your NetSuite system? So up to 6 weeks before a version release, NetSuite will email all the administrators. You'll have noticed as you're logging into NetSuite at the moment, you're going to be getting pop-up messages that you need to tick to say that you have read. Those pop-up messages you should read. NetSuite creates blogs, they create podcasts, and you'll also notice as you log in that there's a portlet that's turned up called the new release portlet. And please don't be one of those people that just minimize it to make it go away. We're going to go through the new release portlet in some detail. So that new release portlet is your window into the new features for each release. Really important that you go through and use some of the functionality there. The neat thing about it is it also counts down until your upgrade day. The last way to prepare is you're already at it. Liberate's twice yearly customer event. We time these for the NetSuite's upgrades. So there it is, the new release portlet for 2021.1. So the upgrade countdown. So as I said, 2021.1, the date that this will be upgraded, and excuse the American dating there, but 9th of April 2021 is when Liberate's NetSuite system will be upgraded. And if you haven't got your release preview, how you opt in to get your release preview, and I'll discuss that later on as well, how you do that. You do need to opt in for the release preview if you haven't used it before. So on the release preview portlet, down the bottom, you've got 6 icons that you can drill through to. If you look here, you can see I'm selecting the one that says sneak peeks. Behind the sneak peeks, we get a whole lot of blogs that NetSuite have produced about some of the neat things that we talked about today. These things take 5 minutes to read. They don't take a long time. So as the NetSuite administrators, the NetSuite champions, the main users of your NetSuite system, I really suggest you go through and click on these and actually and learn a little bit about what's happening if you do nothing else. Now, if you really want to get into it, the release notes. This is what the consultants from Liberate have read for you and presented the main points today, but they're all available by clicking through onto the release notes icon on the release preview. And then from there, you can click anywhere else. We talked about advanced numbering. There's more information there for you to find out about. The next icon there is release preview login. And this is really quite fun, the release preview account. What is it? The release preview is a complete backup of your production account, operating in a standalone test environment, and it's running the latest release. Now, I read that out specifically to make sure I get it right. So literally what it is your production point, they're taking a cut of it at a certain point of time, and then they've upgraded it to the new version so that you can run test processes through it. The configuration is exactly the same as your production accounts, although do remember it doesn't, it was upgraded. It was, so the cut was taken like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So if any new users have started since then, or any changes you've made since then, they won't be reflected in the release preview. Now, also be aware that it does not interact with the production or sandbox accounts, i.e. it is not a sandbox. Any changes you make in the release preview, stay in the release preview. Some people use this as a sandbox, and I've certainly got no problems with using it like that, but be aware that the release preview environment will be removed after you've been upgraded without warning. Any changes you make, anything you turn on, anything you want to test in the release preview, you've got to make those changes into your production account. There is no interaction between the two, as there is between a production account and a sandbox account. So you will all have access to your release preview now, and how long it lasts after you're upgraded, it depends. Maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. One thing that NetSuite have changed just recently is that you didn't used to be able to take a snapshot of your sandbox and put that into release preview. That has now changed, and you can see your sandbox in a preview environment in 2021.1. So those of you that are used to using a sandbox, it is exactly the same in your drop-down roles, except it says release preview. Those of you who don't have a sandbox, what you'll see when you look at your roles is you'll have an extra role there. Your administrator role, if you're an administrator, and then your RP for release preview role. Don't get them messed up. How do we tell the difference? Well, your main account should have your logo up the top, and your release preview says very simply release preview. What we tend to do is also make it a different color, so it's really obvious. But every year I talk to somebody and they've done a whole lot of transactions while in the release preview, thinking they're in the production account. Don't be that person. So like I said, you need to opt in to the release preview now. So if you haven't done so already, how you opt in is you go to setup, to company, and then to release preview. On the right-hand side there, you'll see that you can, there's a button there to request release preview. If you have any trouble with that, ask Man and Mario and they'll be able to help you. Just be aware, it generally takes 24 to 48 hours for the release preview to appear in your roles list. To do this in your sandbox environment, you do exactly the same, but while in the sandbox. So a few little pointers about using the release preview is that your integrations need to point to the correct endpoint, because of course your integrations are aiming at your production system. When you first start using the release preview, the performance will be slower. As I mentioned before, the changes in production can't be moved to release preview, and bundles can't be installed between production and release preview, i.e. you can't create a bundle in release preview and move it into production. Okay, the training resources. On the far right here of the new release portlet, we have training resources. There's a whole ton of videos to watch about the new functionality and some of the trainings that you can get that NetSuite provides. And here I'm just showing you, there's a little bit that we talked about today. All that information is available by clicking that button and in Suite Answers. And then the release preview guide, that's the second from the right, where you can start looking at test plan documentation. Creating a test plan is really important. You only have to do it once, but once you've done it, this should be kept update. And this is what you test your processes, your core processes, every release. A test plan is provided by NetSuite that you can then create yourself. Like I said, once you've created it, save it, update it, but it only requires once. And to be honest, everybody should have you would have done this for user acceptance testing, this type of thing. It's just keeping those updated. So when you're doing your test planning, like I said, it's the critical processes or flows that you really need to test in the release preview test. So to do that, go talk to the business owners or the senior leadership team or the subject matter experts in your company so that you can start documenting those workflows. Now, we like using Lucidchart process flows when we're implementing a site. What we like to do is have you then take on those process flows and build on them. They literally become part of your knowledge base. This is the process flow to use NetSuite. And as you change a process flow, as hopefully we've taught you to, you can then change the Lucidchart process. Once you've got that process flow in Lucidchart, that's one of the things you should be putting into your test plan to make sure everything works correctly. And of course, the last point there, execute it. One other resource, of course, that's us, Liberate IT. We're always happy to help and discuss anything to do with your upgrades or your processes or your testing. A lot of the consultants will be not shy in coming forward and how they view you should, and their views on how you should run your tests through the release portlet and the importance of doing that. Thank you very much for that. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A and I will happily answer any of those questions. Just to, Andrew mentioned that, that there is a little blog that is in our About Us section of our website, www.liberateit.com. And if you go to About Us, then blogs, the very first one there is a little thing on our 10th birthday, and that's where you go if you want to put any birthday wishes in to any of the team. Andrew, back to you.
Thanks so much, Paul. We've got one question sitting in there ready to answer. And yes, I did a truly terrible job of telling everyone where that birthday wishes place is. Okay, let me just quickly share my screen. And we've saved the absolute best for last in terms of going through logging a case with us and our team so that we can best help you with that. So two ways to log a case with our support team via email through support@liberateit.com. If you've got some older emails like a .co.nz address or .com.au, I'd encourage you just to delete those out of your Outlook or whatever email client you're using and use a new .com one. Having some challenges with that at the moment, getting those redirects in place. So yeah, please send it through to that email address, or alternatively log it through our own customer portal that we host via NetSuite, which is liberateit.com. So when you log into the customer portal, the benefit of logging in through here is you actually get to see case history and where we're up to with certain cases and see the history of the comms. So would suggest that's a good place to go. And when logging a case, though, it's really important to give the team as much information as possible around that. Obviously, the subject line is crucial in that. We don't expect you to know every module of NetSuite, but if you clearly know, hey, I've got the demand planning engine and it's not doing what I think it should be doing, it'd be great for you just to tell us that. That just helps us focus our efforts around that. Around urgency level, we really want to respond to you in a timely fashion. I'll get into our SLAs in a second. So if there's something that's actually holding up your business, we want to know about that. We want to know that this is super crucial and important to you. So please send that through. Screenshots are great. You know, yes, the team have logins to many of our customer accounts, but I would always suggest, hey, send the screenshot of the error that you're getting. That would really help us solve that for you. And we will always assume it's you that needs the help if you're logging a case. If that's not the case, let us know and we can reach out to that person. I think some context around support as well might be helpful at this stage before I keep moving on. So if you're new with us and you are implementing NetSuite right now, I think the best thing to do is your consultant is your go-to person and your project manager is your go-to person for any issues that have cropped up or any challenges that you have. What we typically do with every new customer that comes on board is we want to make sure that you're settled in, that you're comfortable with the process, that you're live, that you've been live for a month. What happens then is you're introduced to me, and I actually then take you through a similar process as this to show you exactly what to do to log a support request. So if you're early in the implementation process, fear not, you don't have to follow the support procedure during implementation. You can reach out to your consultant that has been assigned to you or consultants and use your project manager if you need to as well. So, okay, so getting back to the case at hand. So our response times, as I said, is based on priority, which is business impact and the level of service disruption. So if you cannot pay your suppliers and you need to pay them today, we wanted to make sure that we prioritize that over a question on, hey, how do I add this new field to this report that I'm trying to do or this safe search? So in terms of urgency levels, this is SLAs that we are always trying to respond within. Obviously, a U1 is if NetSuite is actually down. Now, as you know, we have no control over the availability of NetSuite, but it's really important for us that you let us know that this has happened because we have escalation processes that the partner community have available to them to really hone the attention of the infrastructure team at NetSuite. But also we want to be able to control the communication out to you about what's going on, what have we learned so far, what's the ETA for resolution on that. So I'm really pleased to say that it is quite a rare thing that it happens, but and generally speaking, by the time you've logged it with us, often it's then resolved straight away. But having said that, we just want to make sure that we're looking after you in that process. A U2 is anything that is just really causing your business to slow down. We always aim to get back to you within 4 hours. We're pretty proud of the fact that we're pretty consistent at that, and we are able to do that well within the 4 hours. So that's just the time frame that we try and do. 8 hours is the U3 time frame. So anything that, hey, this is a nice to have, like that example that I gave around adding an extra field into a saved search, then yeah, we'll typically get back to you and prioritize those more urgent things in the short term. And anything else that you might have a question on in terms of training schedules, etc. Typically, they go from the support desk through to me, and they give me a 24-hour turnaround time to get those across to you. You are able to track the status in the portal of the case. I won't read these verbatim, but I like to think that these are pretty self-explanatory. Often a case will stay open for a little while, awaiting your response. We do understand that from time to time you log a case with us and priorities shift and different things move on. You'll start to get some emails from us just asking for a response. And it's fairly automated there, so it's not personal if we're harassing you on that. We just want to make sure that that's solved for you, and we will close the case also if you find that you aren't able to give us any confirmation that issue is now resolved. One thing in logging a case that I always like to say to customers, especially as they're coming on board for the first time, is look, if you feel like you have to write War and Peace to properly articulate what the issue is, and you don't want to spend an hour doing that, we understand that, we get that. What I would encourage you to do is yes, still log the case through online or through email, but just request a call back from one of the agents, and they'll give you a call so that you can explain to that over the phone, and they can help you out that way. So definitely want to keep that on the table as well. Okay, yes, so defects are something that happen with NetSuite from time to time. One day something works and the next it hasn't. It's not necessarily just around upgrade times, but that does happen. If no one does their testing beforehand, or the test plan wasn't effective, then defects can come up with unintended consequences of enhancements, right? So log that with us, talk to us about that. We obviously do due investigation around all that, make sure that everything's okay, we can replicate the issue, and then we send that across to the support team at NetSuite on your behalf. That way you're then kept up to date with the progress around that. So NetSuite don't have to wait until a release to fix a defect. They can put in a hot fix, particularly if there's a major issue on the card. So don't feel like there's no point in logging a defect with us if you think, oh, this is going to take 6 months or 5 months to resolve. NetSuite do have the ability to push through hot fixes as well. Biannual new release upgrades, we've spent a bit of time talking about that today, so I won't labor that point. Suite app support, that is something that we can't actually offer because we don't have the inside knowledge and workings of those suite apps. We are here to help those. So if your suite app provider is saying, well, talk to me about these settings in NetSuite or this data in NetSuite, that's the cause of your issue, but you can't see it, reach out to us and we're happy to help, all on the NetSuite side of things. Absolutely. We do know that a number of vendors do put a number of complicated scripts and codes into your account when they deploy that suite app, and that isn't something that we're able to pull apart and deconstruct and help out with. But the vendor are. I mean, we tend to be very choosy with the vendors that we recommend to our customers. So if it's something that you've acquired through a recommendation from us, then we like to think that those vendors are very good at supporting their customers after implementation, just as we are. We touched on NetSuite outages. NetSuite do have an outage page, which thankfully is separate to the NetSuite login. It's the status.netsuite.com. I've got that in my my favorites bar. I recommend you do that as well. At the moment, the majority of our customers are on the NA West data center, which happens to be Seattle. If you happen to see that in the session from Matt earlier today, that is changing. That's moving to Australia this year. We're very pleased that that's happening, both from a latency and performance point of view. Having said all that, there is an overview page of everything, of all the data centers across the world. So check that out. That is a good go-to place to find out what's going on. We check that out as well. Typically, our support team find out more up-to-date information than what they post on here, but definitely check that out. There's also an outage report map that's supplied by a third party as well that you might want to check out if you want to know, hey, is this more than just local area of Auckland that's being impacted by that? And as the slide says, email us, let us know that you've been impacted, and we're here to help. So that's it from me, and that's our session. Really glad that we went through that. Sorry we've gone particularly over time, but I think it was a valuable session to go through. Again, wanted to say a big thank you to all of our customers that have been through the session today, particularly those that have stuck it out towards the end. And as I mentioned, this recording will be available on our website and on YouTube. I'd also ask if you can put your thoughts around our 10-year anniversary on our website, which is liberateit.com. Would really appreciate that. Big thank you to the team at Liberate. They, I think some of them, apart from some of their Zoom skills, have shown off their excellent NetSuite knowledge. And I say that tongue in cheek because Zoom can be a bit tricky at times. But so yeah, a big thank you to the team. They've taken time out of a busy schedule to do this for us and for you, so that you can get the most out of the NetSuite solution. Big thank you to NetSuite as well for releasing a really quality product. I was really quite impressed when I started working with NetSuite 4 years ago. So really, really pleased to align ourselves to them. All right, so from here, I will wrap up and wish you a very good afternoon and take care, and can't wait to our in-person events or events later on in this year. Okay, take care.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description. At Liberate IT, we can provide free consulting to understand your business system requirements, understand your company growth plans, and provide free NetSuite demonstrations. For more information, visit our website.